Engineer Support Regiment, fall in!
Range will advance, a column of troops. By the left, quick march.
Great. Halt! For Engineer Support Regiment, advance, up, turn! Open, order, march! Right, dress!
Front rank, steady! Four, five, move up. 4-2, move up. 4-3, move up. Still. Center rank, steady! 4-2, move up. Carry it on. 4-3 up. Square rank, steady!
Eyes front! For Engineer Support Regiment, stand at ease! Attention!
Good. Presenting for Engineer Support Regiment 167 all ranks on parade, sir. Sir.
For Engineer Support Regiment, stand at ease. Attention. Officers, fall in. Infantry Counter-Explosive Threat Squadron, stand at ease.
4-5, stand at ease.
4-8 Combat Service Support Squadron, stand at ease.
Four Engineer Support Regiment, attend shot.
Yes, sir. We're 181 ranks up right, sir. Four Engineer Support Regiment, stand at ease. Stand easy.
Good afternoon and welcome to the No. 2 Construction Battalion Recognition Ceremony, hosted by 4 Engineer Support Regiment. Our commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Adam Poirier, will now address the parade and spectators.
Honorary Colonel Rock, Captain Journer, Mr. Gross, those who traveled from both New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, thank you for being here today. And those that are streaming online, thank you again for tuning in. It's an honor for 4ESR to host this parade in our new facilities and to welcome you here to participate in this commemorative event where we not only remember the contributions of the No. 2 during the Great War, but their legacy and what it means today. For those who don't know, today is No. 2 Construction Battalion's birthday. Created in Pictou 107 years ago, the battalion served in the Forestry Corps during World War I. No. 2 operated predominantly in the Jura Mountains of Anjou, France, where they fulfilled a variety of engineer-related tasks and mission sets, including the felling and cutting of trees, the subsequent mill work, and the creation of railway ties. They also conducted water supply related tasks and moved resources and maintained roads and built roadways. All engineer work that was extremely vital to sustaining the Allied war efforts. So today we celebrate this birthday. We celebrate the birthday battalion and its members by raising their camp flag for the first time. You know, it was in a meeting last fall between myself and Mr. Gross that we originally started talking about this, about raising this camp flag, with the intent of doing it during one of our exercises. But what I didn't know at the time was that no flag actually existed. So over the past months, with many stakeholders, we worked together on building a consensus on a design and getting that flag registered and approved. So here we are today. You know, a flag will mean something a bit different for everyone. But for me, when I look at this camp flag that we're going to quickly unveil, or soon unveil, it really symbolizes two things: remembrance, but also a way forward. The No. 2 crest and the forest green that you'll see represents remembrance. But to me, it's much more than remembering the accomplishments in France. You see, their bravery set us on a path that helped shape Canadian society. In the face of adversity, both prejudice and systemic racism, their will and their perseverance was a catalyst in helping us to start breaking down racial barriers. A significant feat, and then one that we cannot forget as we continue our efforts to become a more inclusive and accepting armed forces where everyone is given equal opportunities regardless of who they are. The royal blue and the brick red represents the Canadian Military Engineers, and for me specifically, 4ESR. Last year, when the battalion was awarded its battle honor, 4ESR was also named as the perpetuating unit. And over the past year, we have worked hard to ensure that we help preserve the memory of Number 2 and its legacy to a high standard. We have done so by participating in key events and ceremonies and working to strengthen our relations with organizations such as the Black Cultural Center of Nova Scotia. And I view today as another one of these efforts. This weekend, we will continue our efforts as we send approximately 30 of our soldiers to Pictou to participate in the annual Number 2 Construction Battalion Remembrance Ceremony. It's important work, and something we look forward to supporting in the years to come as 4ESR continues its efforts to perpetuate the battalion. So again, thank you all for coming here today and to joining us. It's a pleasure to welcome you here, and certainly I look forward to shaking your hand and sharing a slice of cake once the ceremony is over. Thank you.
I would like to introduce our first guest speaker, Mr. Douglas Ruck. He is a lawyer with extensive experience in labor and employment law, human rights, civil litigation, and administrative law. Mr. Ruck has lectured and presented workshops and seminars at the provincial, national, and international level on various topics in labor and employment law, human rights, and more. He is presently the chair of the Board of Governors of the University of King's College. As a part of his father's legacy, he promotes the memory and significance of the Number 2 Construction Battalion. The story of the battalion and its place in Canadian history may have been lost if not for the book written by his father in 1987. The Black Battalion, 1916 to 1920, Canada's best kept military secret. Mr. Ruck.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much. Let me first of all say, it's a long ways from over there to here. Better planning would have taken me over here. So I'll keep that in mind. It's an honor to be here today. It's also an honor to have the guys clear for a brief moment, to have this opportunity to speak at this very important event. You heard the reason why this is significant. You heard the significance of the camp flag and what that means. And it's absolutely true. And I want to add maybe some additional context to that. In many respects, what this comes down to is what's said every Remembrance Day, lest we forget. The need to be here today, the need to have the camp flag, the need for the perpetuation, the need for the event in Pictou each and every year, the very need for my father's book written in 1987 is because the battalion was almost forgotten. When war broke out in 1914, they were not wanted. They were, in fact, told they had no place in that particular war, that they were not Canadian citizens who could participate. Now, it's important to keep in mind that that attitude did not come about in 1914 or 1913 or 1912. That goes back a long ways as part of this country's history. If we look at the very fact that in 1833-34, Britain abolished slavery for all its colonies. The United States abolished slavery 1865, 1864. The abolition of slavery, however, did not eliminate racism. Racism persisted, as was mentioned by the first speaker. But having said that, when the First World War broke out in Europe, racism became forefront. Those men were excluded from the Canadian forces as a direct consequence of systemic institutional racism. Racism, dare I say, that still exists to this very day. A great deal has happened since my father wrote the book in 1987. But there remains as well a great deal to do. But when those men of the battalion were finally allowed to become part of the expeditionary forces, in 1916. They were not wanted. They were viewed as being an unwanted appendage to what Canada was putting together to assist in that war effort. And when the war ended in 1918, by 1920, those unwanted individuals were surgically removed. They were disbanded. And being disbanded, they were in effect forgotten. There was little left of anything to even show that there had ever been a black battalion. My father's book was that one marker that held together that memory. And he would take great pleasure and honor and would support the efforts that are now being made to ensure that memory is not forgotten. It's so very important. And what has happened over those years, that others have picked up that very same thing and now working with that. It's almost been a forensic effort, restructuring what was once lost, restructuring what should have been. And today's event in having this camp flag becomes exceedingly important for that very reason. A flag, as was stated, means different things to different people. For the battalion, for those men who are no longer with us, it means that their memory and what they sacrificed and what they and their families did is now to be honored in a way that here at Gagetown, it can be spoken of with honor and respect. Because the flag means dignity. The flag means belonging. It means respect. It means camaraderie, being part of something. They did not have that. When they were disbanded, an administrative act took away what had been the conscious effort of the black community, but it was now gone. Today in Gagetown, we bring that back. But along with raising the flag, there comes an obligation, dare I say. And Gagetown is in a prime position to meet that obligation. As a training facility in Canada, Gagetown must now take upon it the obligation to ensure that all those who come through these doors, all those who come to train at this facility, are told of the battalion, that they too can hear and appreciate what the battalion meant to this country, what it means to all of us, what it means to you in uniform, what it means to me in my honorary position. Gagetown now must carry that oath and meet that obligation. And I take the liberty of saying that, because if it's not done, then the raising of the flag becomes not irrelevant, but loses its significance. And it must not be allowed to ever lose its significance. Gagetown must become known as the place that perpetuates, not just in name, but in reality, the memory and existence of the No. 2 Construction Battalion. Thank you very much.
Our next guest speaker is Captain Kevin Jr. His career with the CAF Reserve spans over 3 decades. He progressed through the ranks to Chief Warrant Officer and was appointed the RSM of the Toronto Scottish Regiment, also working as a diversity advisor for 4th Canadian Division and the National Military Co-Chair of the Defence Visibility Minority Advocacy Group. He has been a champion for initiatives related to the No. 2 Construction Battalion and was appointed a member of the 2022 National Apology Advisory Committee. Captain Jr. is a retired Deputy Superintendent from the Ministry of the Solicitor General and has been the chair and member for various boards of director, including the Policing Advisory Council of Caledon. He is a recipient of numerous honors and awards, including the member of the Order of Military Merit and the Harry Jerome Professional Excellence Award.
Commanding Officer, RSM, everyone on parade, Honorary Colonel, Colonel Pitcher, Barry, Mr. Groves. And I left Colonel and Mr. Groves to the end because they have a significant role that was played during the apology last year. They were the community and the camp leads to make sure that the apology that was delivered by the Prime Minister was actually planned and executed very well. I must say I'm really humbled to stand to talk to you on this historic occasion. Historic occasion and one that I will remember for a lifetime. A number of years ago, I learned about Canada's best kept secret, military secret, and became a champion for initiatives across the CAF as it relates to number 2. But never in my wildest dreams did I believe that the Prime Minister of Canada would stand on the hallowed grounds where men of number 2 trained and use words like, on behalf of Canadians, I apologize for the anti-black racism. I apologize for the way that you were treated. But it was reality. It happened. And I was there to see and hear him speak those words. I was also blessed to be on the National Apology Advisory Committee that ensured that the voice of the descendants were actually heard and brought to bear as the Prime Minister and the government pulled together to deliver that apology. I'd like to share a story with you of the significance of this apology. There's a direct descendant that is sitting right there. And she sat right beside the Prime Minister as she celebrated her birthday. But there's a member that came in from Calgary. And when he came in, he sat at the apology and he heard the apology. But when it was over, he asked his son to drive him to Africville. As a child, he lived in Africville. And his son said his dad sat on the bench, and as he sat there, tears ran down his eyes, through his eyes, down his face. And at the end of it, he said, I can go in peace now. The government has apologized to me because of the prejudice that my dad felt. But I can also sit here in Africville and see that I came full circle. A significant time for me. But I'd like to end by telling you another story. A number of years ago, as the RSM for the Toronto Scottish Regiment, the Queen Mom died. She was a Colonel-in-Chief. And we decided that the name of the regiment would be changed so that the Queen Mom is always remembered. The name was changed from the Toronto Scottish Regiment to the Toronto Scottish Regiment, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother's Home. It's easy to make a change, but what had to happen was, as the RSM, I embodied the traditions, the cultures of the regiment. I made sure that all soldiers, at all times, remember who we are and what we did. That change was significant in the history of the regiment. So I, with the leadership, had to work harder so that everyone realized that things have changed. And we have to live that new change. Your regiment is going through that change time. You now have to adjust your culture. You now have to adjust the language that you speak to ensure that people understand that 4ESR embodies the culture, the ancestors of number 2 Constructive Battalion. It's not going to be easy, but as you go through change, remember who you are. You're a proud regiment, and your proud regiment now carry that pride, remembering number 2 Constructive Battalion. God bless you as you continue doing what you do.
Our final speaker will be Jennifer Dow. Not only is she a descendant, but she's also a genealogist who has done extensive research on members of the number 2 Construction Battalion. Jennifer.
Good afternoon, everybody. I only found out I was speaking last night, so I am going to read what I quickly prepared because I did not have time to memorize it. I want to thank everyone that took the time to be here today. Today is a very meaningful day for me. I usually live in 2 worlds. One where I'm a dedicated military spouse, right here at base Gagetown. I married into a huge military family, so my everyday life is surrounded by military everything. The second world I was born into. As a descendant of early Black New Brunswickers, I grew up knowing my community's history. And for the last 10 years, I have researched and studied Black family history here in New Brunswick. And although I've grown up knowing about and researching my family's military history, until a few years ago, sorry, I just lost my place. Until a few years ago, my 2 worlds rarely came together. I did not see Black military history recognized, and when it was, often New Brunswick was left out. I am so excited that today these 2 worlds are coming together and that I can be here at the base where we've been posted for 12 years to celebrate the number 2 Construction Battalion. For far too long, we did not learn about soldiers of the number 2 Construction Battalion. My mother shared a memory from her school days. When she asked her teacher why there were no Black soldiers in the World War I book they were studying, the teacher simply said, Black men did not serve. That day, she went home and told her grandmother, who took out the family album and showed my mother photographs of my great-grand's brother, George William Stewart, the bandmaster sergeant of the number 2 Construction Battalion, her cousin, Seymour Tyler, who served in both World War I and World War II, and family friend Manzer Eatman, who was among the first volunteers from Fredericton and was pictured in the Daily Gleaner in August of 1916. Growing up, my mother made sure I learned about these soldiers and the number 2 Construction Battalion. And although the battalion had volunteers from all over Canada, the US, and the Caribbean enlist, today I want to speak about the significant connection that New Brunswick has to the number 2 Construction Battalion. In November 1915, members of the St. John Brass Band, a talented all-Black band from St. John, New Brunswick, along with other Black New Brunswickers, traveled to Sussex to enlist in the 104th Battalion. But they were rejected. They were told it would not be in the battalion's best interest to have them, and it was deemed unfair for white soldiers to have to mingle with Black soldiers. However, this setback didn't discourage them. These men made a pledge that if a battalion of Black soldiers was formed, they would bring their instruments and join as a fully formed band. True to their word, the St. John Brass Band not only kept that vow, but also actively assisted in recruitment efforts throughout New Brunswick. In 1916, a St. John newspaper said the number 2 Construction Battalion Band was one of the finest bands in Canada. I like to think this is partially thanks to the perseverance and determination of the men from the St. John Brass Band. I also want to mention that a lot of these soldiers also started multi-generational legacy of service to our country. I want to take a moment today to acknowledge the descendants who continue this legacy and are either veterans or currently serving members. I was so proud to see many of these descendants marching at the National Apology in Truro last year. I want to thank each and every one of you for your service. You make your ancestors proud. In closing, I cannot express enough how happy I am to witness the recognition of these incredible soldiers and their service. I hope to continue to see their service and sacrifice acknowledged here in New Brunswick and throughout the country. Again, thank you all for being here and listening to me. Thank you.
Engineer Regiment, attention!
We will now proceed with the raising of the No. 2 Construction Battalion Camp Flag by Master Corporal Anton Watts and Corporal Donovan Stewart. This concludes the No. 2 Construction Battalion parade. Once the parade is dismissed, we invite our guests and spectators to join us for a 4A-star tour, followed by a cake cutting ceremony and refreshments. Thank you.
Officers, fall out. Arms up. Sir. For Engineer Support Regiment, close order, march! For Engineer Support Regiment, dismiss! Chimo!
Brain first there, as soon as she's done the rocket brain dress, I should have Please left turn. My bad.
I'm going back to here.
I just grabbed those like, now you're